Did you steal this ticket? Brenda Collins snapped, snatching the boarding pass out of Maya Williams' hand. People like you don't deserve to sit here. Maya jerked back, startled. For a second, she didn't even understand what had happened. The ticket had been in her hand. Now it was in Brenda's, held up like evidence. Maya looked at her empty fingers, then at Brenda. "Excuse me?" Brenda said. "You heard me." Maya kept her voice low. "That ticket has my name on it. Please check it." Brenda looked Maya over, from her cream sweater to her simple black slacks, then down to the worn brown purse near her feet. "Seat 2A. First class. And you expect me to believe that?" Maya said. "I don't need you to believe it. I need you to verify it." A few passengers looked up. A man in row 3 paused with his coffee halfway to his mouth. A woman across the aisle lowered her phone. No one said anything. Beside Maya, in seat 2B, a man slept under a gray airline blanket, his cap pulled low over his face. His breathing was slow and heavy. He had not moved since boarding. Brenda took a step closer. "How did you get this ticket?" Maya said. "I bought it." "With whose card?" "My card." Brenda gave a short laugh. "Your card?" Maya reached toward her purse. "I have my ID. I have the confirmation email. I can show you the receipt." Brenda pulled the boarding pass away. "No, don't reach for anything." Maya froze. "I'm reaching for my identification," Brenda said. "I said don't reach." Maya slowly lifted both hands where Brenda could see them. "Fine. My ID is in the front pocket of my purse. You can look at it yourself." "I don't need to." "Yes, you do. You accused me of stealing." Brenda's eyes hardened. "I asked a question. You asked it loud enough for everyone on this plane to hear." Brenda turned slightly, making sure the nearby passengers could hear her. "Ma'am, passengers who belong in first class usually don't make this much trouble." Maya stared at her. "I'm not making trouble. I'm asking you to do your job." Near the galley, Evan Miller, the junior flight attendant, shifted uncomfortably. He had seen Maya board. Her pass had scanned green. Seat 2A had shown confirmed. No warning. No problem. He knew Brenda was wrong. But Brenda was the lead attendant, and Evan had learned not to challenge her in front of passengers. So he stayed quiet. Brenda said, "First class has standards," Maya replied, "and basic respect should be one of them." A man in row 3 muttered, "Oh, come on." Maya turned her eyes toward him for half a second, then back to Brenda. "Exactly." Brenda's face flushed. "Stand up," Maya said. "No." Brenda blinked. "No? Not until you check my ticket. I'm not going to argue with you. Then verify it. You're disturbing the cabin." Maya looked around. Several passengers quickly looked away. "I'm sitting in my seat. You're the one holding my ticket." Brenda leaned down. "You are affecting the passengers here. These people paid for comfort, not a scene. I paid too. Stand up. Check the ticket." Brenda grabbed Maya by the arm. Maya gasped and pulled back. "Don't touch me." Brenda tightened her grip. "Get up." I said don't touch me. Brenda yanked again, forcing Maya halfway out of the seat. Maya caught the armrest to keep from stumbling. Her purse tipped over, and her driver's license slipped out of the side pocket onto the cushion. Maya pointed to it. "There. My ID. Look at it." Brenda didn't even glance down. "I told you to stand up. My name is on that license. My name is on that ticket. You can explain that to security." Maya stood now, stiff and humiliated, one hand still on the seat back. She looked around the cabin. The faces were turned toward her, but the voices were gone. Brenda raised her voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disturbance. We're handling a passenger who refuses to cooperate." Maya said. "That is not true," Brenda snapped. "You are making everyone uncomfortable." Maya answered. "No. You're making everyone witness what you're doing." The words landed hard. Evan lowered his eyes. Brenda stepped closer and spoke through clenched teeth. "Listen carefully. You can walk to economy, or I can call security and have you removed." Maya said. "You still haven't checked the ticket." "I don't need to." "Because you already decided." Brenda's face went cold. "Do not get an attitude with me." Maya took a slow breath. "Return my boarding pass." "No." "Check my ID." No. Call the gate. Brenda lifted the ticket. We'll find out who this really belongs to. At that moment, the man under the gray blanket shifted. Brenda's voice had cut through his sleep. His hand moved on the armrest. His brow tightened. Slowly, he pulled the blanket down from his face. "What's going on?" he asked, irritated and half awake. Brenda turned toward him, ready to apologize for the noise, then stopped. Her face changed instantly. The man in seat 2B was Arthur Whitmore, chairman of Whitmore Global Holdings, billionaire investor, the largest VIP client Crestline Airways had ever had. Brenda's voice softened so fast it sounded like someone else speaking. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm so sorry. We didn't mean to disturb your sleep." Arthur blinked, then looked at Maya standing in the aisle. He looked at Brenda's hand gripping the boarding pass. He looked at the driver's license lying untouched on the seat. His expression darkened. "Why is my wife standing?" Brenda's lips parted. Your wife?" Arthur sat up fully. "Yes, my wife. Why is she standing?" Brenda's face went pale. "Wife. She's your wife." Arthur's voice dropped. "Answer me." Brenda swallowed hard. "Sir, there was a small issue with her ticket. She became difficult, and we had reason to believe the ticket may have been stolen." Arthur stared at her. "Stolen?" Brenda rushed on. "I apologize again for the disturbance. She was affecting your rest and the comfort of the cabin. I was only trying to handle the situation." Arthur stood slowly. "Give me the ticket." "Mr. Whitmore, give me the ticket." Brenda handed it to him with shaking fingers. Arthur looked down. Maya William. Seat 2A. First class. Then he picked up Maya's driver's license from the seat. Same name. Same face. Same woman Brenda had refused to see. Brenda said, "Sir, I didn't know she was connected to you." Arthur's eyes lifted. His voice thundered through the cabin. "Did you just say my wife stole her ticket?" Brenda went pale. I didn't mean." Arthur stepped beside Maya and took her hand. "You grabbed my wife. You accused her of theft. You humiliated her in front of this entire cabin. And her ID was sitting right there." Brenda's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Arthur looked at the silent passengers, then back at Brenda. "You didn't know she was my wife. That's the problem. You thought she was nobody." Maya stood beside him, her hand in his, calm but wounded. The first-class cabin was silent again. Arthur's words still hung in the cabin when Brenda finally looked down at her own hand. Only then did she seem to realize she was still holding Maya's boarding pass like evidence and not like what it was. A paid ticket with a woman's name on it. "Mr. Whitmore," Brenda said, her voice breaking into a nervous whisper. "I am so sorry. I truly had no idea." Arthur did not blink. "No idea about what?" Brenda's mouth opened, then closed. I didn't know she was with you." Maya's hand tightened slightly inside Arthur's. He felt it. He knew that was the part that cut deepest. Not that Brenda had made a mistake, but that she was only sorry because she had discovered Maya belonged to someone powerful. Arthur looked at Brenda with a coldness that made the entire first-class cabin sit still. "You didn't need to know she was with me. You needed to know she was a passenger." Brenda swallowed. "Of course, sir. I understand that now." "No," Arthur said. "You don't. If you understood it, my wife would still be sitting in her seat." Brenda tried to smile, but it collapsed before it became anything useful. "I can fix this right away. Mrs. Whitmore can sit back down. We can move past this before departure." Maya looked at her for the first time since Arthur had stood. "Move past it?" Brenda turned quickly to her. "Ma'am, I apologize if my tone came across as harsh." "If your tone came across as harsh?" Maya repeated, calm but wounded. "You grabbed me. You called me a thief. You told me people like me didn't deserve to sit here." A few passengers looked down again. The words sounded uglier when repeated plainly. They always did. Brenda's eyes flickered toward Arthur. "I was trying to follow security procedure." Maya pointed gently toward the license still in Arthur's hand. "Security procedure starts with checking the ID." Evan Miller stood near the galley, pale and motionless. Arthur noticed him. "You," Arthur said. "What's your name?" Evan flinched. "Evan Miller, sir. Did my wife's boarding pass scan correctly when she boarded?" Evan's eyes went to Brenda. Arthur's voice sharpened. Don't look at her. Look at me. Evan forced himself to meet Arthur's gaze. Yes, sir. It scanned green. And the seat? 2A, sir. And did you see any system warning? No, sir. Arthur held the boarding pass a little higher, so there was no ticket issue. Evan's throat moved. No, sir. The words landed like a verdict. Brenda's face tightened. Evan, she snapped. That is not the full context. Arthur turned back to her. Then give me the full context. Brenda took one breath too many. She became defensive. Maya said, After you accused me of theft. Brenda rushed on. She refused to cooperate. Maya answered. I offered my ID, Brenda said. She raised her voice. Maya looked around the cabin. Did I? No one answered. Not one passenger. The silence was an answer of its own. Arthur looked at them slowly, row by row. Interesting. Everyone heard the accusation. Nobody heard my wife raise her voice. A woman across the aisle, the one with pearl earrings, shifted uncomfortably. I didn't hear her yell. Brenda turned toward her. Stunned, the woman lowered her eyes but continued. She was calm. Arthur nodded once. Thank you. That small sentence seemed to embarrass the woman more than accusation ever could. She had needed a billionaire to give her permission to tell the truth. Maya saw it and felt no victory in it. Brenda tried to regain control. Mr. Whitmore, with all respect, we have to consider the comfort of all passengers. Arthur's jaw tightened. You keep saying comfort. Whose comfort? Brenda hesitated. Arthur stepped closer, still holding Maya's hand. Was my wife's comfort considered when you snatched her ticket? Sir, was her dignity considered when you grabbed her arm? I didn't mean to. Was her safety considered when you threatened to call security without checking the ID sitting right in front of you? Brenda's lips trembled. I made a mistake. Maya's voice came quietly. No. You made a choice. The cabin went silent again, but this time it was not empty. It carried weight. Maya's voice had no anger in it, and somehow that made it harder to ignore. Arthur turned toward Evan. Get the captain. Evan blinked. Sir, we're still at the gate. The captain is completing pre-flight checks. Then tell him a racial discrimination incident just happened in his first-class cabin, and I want it documented before this aircraft moves an inch. Brenda's face went white. Mr. Whitmore, please. We don't need to involve the captain. Arthur looked at her. You involved the whole cabin when you accused my wife of being a thief. Maya gently pulled her hand from Arthur's and bent to pick up her purse. Arthur immediately reached to help, but she shook her head once, not unkindly, just enough to say, I can stand. I can gather my own things. I am not broken. She placed her purse back upright, took her driver's license from Arthur, and slipped it into the side pocket. Then she turned to Brenda. I want my boarding pass back. Brenda stared at her as though she had forgotten Maya could still speak for herself. Arthur said nothing. He let Maya's words stand alone. Brenda handed the pass over. Her fingers shook as Maya took it. Maya looked at the creased paper. The fold Brenda had made ran straight through her name. For some reason, that small thing hurt more than it should have. Arthur noticed her looking at it. Maya. She lifted her eyes. We don't have to stay on this flight. Maya looked toward the aisle, then at the passengers. Their faces were different now. Some ashamed, some curious, some relieved that the trouble had shifted away from them. She knew what many of them wanted. They wanted her to sit down, accept the apology, let the flight leave on time, let the cabin return to coffee and warm towels and quiet guilt. But Maya had spent too much of her life watching people ask the wounded to protect everyone else from discomfort. No, she said. We're staying until this is written down correctly. Arthur's expression softened. All right. Brenda's eyes widened. Mrs. Whitmore, I already apologized. Maya looked at her. You apologized to him first. Brenda froze. Maya continued, still calm. You apologized for waking him, not for touching me, not for accusing me, not for deciding I didn't belong before you checked one single thing. Arthur looked at Brenda. She's right. From the front of the cabin, Captain Robert Hayes appeared. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired, composed in the way pilots often were when they wanted passengers to believe nothing could rattle them. But his eyes moved quickly from Maya's face to Brenda's expression to Arthur Whitmore standing in the aisle, and he understood that something serious had happened. "Mr. Whitmore," he said carefully. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm Captain Hayes. I understand there's been an incident." Arthur replied, "There has been more than an incident." Maya held up her boarding pass. "Captain, I was sitting in 2A. Miss Collins took my ticket from my hand, accused me of stealing it, refused to check my ID, grabbed my arm, and threatened to call security." Captain Hayes turned to Brenda. "Is that accurate?" Brenda's voice shook. "Captain, I had concerns about the ticket. Did you scan it?" "No, but did you check her ID?" "Did you check her ID?" the captain repeated. Brenda looked at the floor. "No," Arthur said. "Your junior attendant already confirmed her pass scanned green when she boarded." Captain Hayes looked at Evan. Evan nodded. "Yes, Captain. It scanned green. Seat 2A. The captain's face hardened, not loudly, not dramatically, but enough for Brenda to see that the wall she expected to stand behind her was beginning to move away. Captain Hayes said, "Miss Collins, step into the galley." Brenda looked terrified. "Captain, please, this is being blown out of proportion." Maya finally let a trace of pain show in her voice. "It always is, after the wrong person gets hurt." No one spoke after that. Captain Hayes turned to Arthur and Maya. "I apologize. I'm going to document this immediately and contact ground operations before we depart." Arthur said, "You will preserve all records, boarding scans, crew notes, gate logs, and any cabin communication." The captain nodded. "Understood." Brenda tried one last time. "Mr. Whitmore, I truly didn't know she was your wife." Arthur looked at her for a long moment. "And if she wasn't?" The question broke what was left of Brenda's composure. She had no answer, because everyone in that cabin knew the answer. If Maya had not been Arthur Whitmore's wife, Brenda would have sent her to economy. The passengers would have gone back to coffee. Evan would have carried the guilt quietly. The captain might never have heard a word, and Maya William would have been left alone to prove a truth no one had cared enough to check. If this moment touched your heart, please like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you are watching from, because stories like Maya's remind us that dignity matters everywhere. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories about truth, courage, and justice. Maya sat back down in 2A. Arthur sat beside her, no longer under the blanket, no longer hidden. He stayed upright, watchful, one hand resting near Maya's but not covering it. Brenda stood in the galley, pale and silent, while Captain Hayes began making calls. The plane had not even left Atlanta yet, but the flight was already changed forever. Captain Hayes moved into the forward galley with Brenda following 2 steps behind him. The curtain between first class and the galley did not close all the way, and everyone in the first 2 rows could still hear the low, tense rhythm of their voices. "Brenda," Captain Hayes said, keeping his tone controlled. "I need a straight answer. Did you verify Mrs. Whitmore's boarding pass before you accused her?" Brenda lowered her voice. "Captain, I had a concern. That wasn't my question. She didn't look like..." Captain Hayes cut her off. "Stop right there." Brenda's face tightened. "I mean, she didn't present herself like a typical first-class passenger." "A typical first-class passenger? You know what I mean." "No," he said. "I want you to hear yourself say it." Brenda looked away. In seat 2A, Maya heard enough. She sat still with her boarding pass in her lap, smoothing the crease across her name with her thumb. The paper would not flatten. The line Brenda had folded into it stayed there, cutting through Maya William as if the damage had become part of the ink. Arthur noticed. "Maya, I'm fine," she said. "No, you're not." She gave him a small look. Not angry, tired. "I don't need to fall apart for it to count." Arthur sat back slightly. He knew that tone. It was the same one she used at hospital fundraisers when donors praised her like a charity project instead of a woman who had built something real. It was the same tone she used when strangers asked how a girl from Birmingham ended up married to a man like him, as though love required a financial explanation. Across the aisle, The woman with pearl earrings kept twisting her wedding ring. Finally, she leaned forward a little. Mrs. Whitmore? Maya turned. The woman swallowed. I should have said something sooner. I heard what she said. Maya waited. The woman's voice dropped. I'm sorry. Maya gave her a polite nod. Thank you. That was all. No warmth. No absolution. The woman seemed to expect more. Maybe forgiveness, wrapped in a smile so she could feel less ashamed. Maya did not give it. She had learned that apology was often easier for people than action. Arthur looked at the woman. What's your name? Margaret Ellis. Miss Ellis, will you be willing to put what you heard in writing? Margaret's eyes widened. Yes, of course. Arthur nodded. Thank you. The man in 3C, the one who had laughed earlier, shifted in his seat. He suddenly became very interested in the safety card in his seat back pocket. Arthur turned toward him. Sir. The man looked up slowly. Me? Yes. You laughed when my wife was accused. Did you hear Miss Collins use the word steal? The man cleared his throat. I heard some of it. Did you hear the word steal? I might have. That wasn't the question. The man's face reddened. Yes, I heard it. Will you say that in a statement? He looked toward the galley, then at Maya. I don't want to get involved. Maya spoke before Arthur could. You already were. The man had no answer. In the galley, Captain Hayes was now speaking into the aircraft phone. This is Captain Hayes on Flight 482. We have a passenger discrimination complaint involving the lead flight attendant before departure. I need ground operations and a supervisor at the gate immediately. Yes. Preserve the boarding scan records. Yes. I want it documented now. Brenda stood behind him, arms crossed tightly, her face pale. Evan Miller remained near the coffee station, looking like a man trying to disappear inside his own uniform. Arthur saw him. Evan. Evan stepped forward. Yes, sir? Come here. Evan approached slowly. Arthur's voice was not loud, but it carried. You knew her pass was valid. Yes, sir. You knew Miss Collins was wrong. Evan's mouth tightened. Yes, sir. And you let it happen. Evan looked at Maya. His eyes were wet now, but he did not let the tears fall. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm sorry. I should have spoken up. Maya studied him for a moment. He was young, maybe 26, too young to understand that fear becomes habit if you feed it long enough. She said, Why didn't you? Evan swallowed. Because she's the lead. Because I thought if I challenged her, I'd lose my job. Because I told myself you'd be able to prove it somehow. Maya's voice stayed quiet. I was proving it. I know. No, Maya said. You saw it. There's a difference. Evan lowered his head. Yes, ma'am. Arthur leaned forward. You're going to give Captain Hayes a written statement before this plane leaves the gate. Evan nodded. I will. Brenda stepped out of the galley. This is getting ridiculous. Captain Hayes turned sharply. Brenda. No, Captain. With respect. This is being escalated beyond what happened. I made a judgment call. Arthur stood again. The cabin tensed. A judgment call? He said. Brenda held on to the last piece of authority she had. Yes. We make them every day. We protect the cabin. We protect premium passengers. Maya looked up at her. From me? Brenda hesitated. Maya stood slowly, not because she had to, but because she refused to let Brenda tower over her again. Arthur moved as if to help, then stopped when Maya gave the smallest shake of her head. Maya faced Brenda. Say it clearly. Brenda's lips pressed together. Maya continued. You said people like me don't deserve to sit here. You said I stole my ticket. You grabbed my arm. You ignored my ID. So say what you mean. Brenda's voice thinned. I was concerned about irregular passenger behavior. Maya almost smiled, but there was no humor in it. That's a clean phrase for something dirty. Margaret Ellis covered her mouth. Evan stared at the floor. Captain Hayes looked as though every second was adding weight to the report he would have to file. Arthur said, Captain, is Miss Collins still assigned to this cabin? Captain Hayes answered immediately. No. Effective now. She is relieved from lead duties for this flight. Brenda's eyes flashed. Captain, you can't just... I can, Hayes said, and I am. Evan, you'll assist another crew member up front until we receive a replacement or ground direction. Brenda, you will remain in the galley and have no further passenger contact. Brenda looked at Arthur, her anger now mixed with panic. Mr. Whitmore, please. I've served this airline for 16 years, Arthur said. Then you had 16 years to learn how to treat people. The words hit her harder than shouting would have. The gate supervisor arrived 5 minutes later, slightly out of breath, badge swinging from his neck. His name tag read, Carl Jensen. He stepped onto the aircraft with the hurried politeness of someone who had been told there was a VIP problem, but not yet told there was a moral one. Mr. Whitmore, Carl said. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm Carl Jensen, Gate Operations. I want to sincerely apologize for any confusion. Maya's eyes sharpened. Arthur said, choose your next words carefully. Carl froze. Arthur continued. There was no confusion. My wife was accused of theft, grabbed, and threatened with removal after offering proof of her identity. Call it what it is. Carl looked at Maya. To his credit, he did not look away. Mrs. Whitmore, I apologize. What happened to you was wrong. Maya asked, will that be in the report? Yes, ma'am. Not customer misunderstanding. Not seat dispute. Not tone issue. Carl nodded. I understand. Maya held up the creased boarding pass. This paper was enough when I boarded. It became suspicious only after she looked at me. Put that in the report too. Carl took a breath. I will. The aircraft remained at the gate another 20 minutes. Some passengers sighed. One checked his watch loudly. Another whispered about missing a meeting. Maya heard them. Arthur did too. Arthur turned to the cabin. For anyone concerned about the delay, remember this. My wife was delayed first. Her dignity was delayed. Her safety was delayed. Your meeting can wait. No one complained after that. When the replacement crew member arrived, Brenda was escorted off the aircraft through the jet bridge. She did not look at Maya as she passed. Maya watched her go without satisfaction. What she felt was heavier than satisfaction. It was the ache of knowing that if Arthur had not been beside her, Brenda would still be smiling at the door. Captain Hayes returned to row 2. Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Whitmore, we're cleared to continue if you still wish to travel. Arthur looked at Maya. Your call. Maya looked at the seat, the ticket, the passengers, the aisle where Brenda had pulled her up. Then she sat down in 2A. We're going to New York, she said. I have a room full of children waiting to hear that they matter. Arthur sat beside her. Then that's where we're going. As the cabin door closed, Maya looked out the window at the Atlanta morning. The plane had not yet left the ground, but something had already been exposed at 30,000 feet inside the hearts of everyone on board. The cabin door closed with a soft mechanical thud, but the sound felt heavier than usual. To Maya, it was not just the closing of an aircraft door. It was the sound of every excuse being sealed inside with them. Captain Hayes's voice came over the speaker a moment later. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We'll be departing for New York shortly. Please make sure your seatbelts are fastened and all carry-on items are properly stowed. His voice was calm, professional, the kind of voice meant to make people believe everything was under control. But in first class, no one believed that. Maya sat in 2A, the creased boarding pass resting on her lap. She had smoothed it 3 times already, but the fold through her name would not disappear. Arthur noticed her thumb moving over the paper again. You don't have to keep looking at it, he said quietly. Maya did not turn from the window. I know. Then why do you? She looked down. Because 10 minutes ago, this was proof. Then she touched it, and suddenly it became suspicious. Arthur's jaw tightened. Maya, I'm not saying it because I'm surprised. She finally looked at him. That's the worst part. I'm not surprised. Arthur had no easy answer for that. He had known racism existed. He had funded programs, signed statements, sat on panels, donated money, listened when Maya talked about things he had never lived through. But knowing something existed was different from watching someone lay hands on your wife in front of a cabin full of people who chose silence. He reached for her hand, then stopped just short. May I? Maya looked at his hand and gave a faint nod. He took her hand gently. I should have been awake. You were exhausted. That doesn't make it better. No, Maya said, but it makes it human. Across the aisle, Margaret Ellis heard that and lowered her eyes. She had been married for 34 years before her husband passed. She knew what it sounded like when love was quiet and real. It made her shame feel sharper. The plane began to move. As it pushed back from the gate, Evan Miller walked through first class with stiff movements, checking seatbelts, tray tables, and bags. He stopped near Maya's row. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said softly, "can I get you anything before takeoff? Water? Coffee?" Maya looked up at him. "No, thank you." Evan nodded but didn't leave. "I meant what I said earlier. I'm sorry." Arthur watched him carefully. Maya said, "Evan, an apology is not the same thing as courage." "I know. Do you?" Evan swallowed. "I think I'm starting to." Maya's voice softened, but only slightly. "Starting is not enough when someone is being hurt in front of you." Evan looked as though the words had struck him in the chest. "Yes, ma'am." Arthur said, "You'll write the statement?" "Yes, sir. Before we land." "Good." Evan turned to go, then stopped. "Mrs. Whitmore?" Maya looked at him. "I saw your pass scan green. I should have said it the second she started questioning you." Maya held his gaze. "Yes, you should have." Evan nodded once and walked back toward the galley. The plane taxied slowly past the windows of Hartsfield-Jackson. Outside, morning sunlight flashed across service trucks, luggage carts, and ground crews in reflective vests. Inside, the mood was still and uneasy. The replacement crew member, a woman named Denise Carter, handled the safety demonstration with a practiced smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Welcome aboard Crestline Airways Flight 482, Denise said. "We appreciate your patience this morning." Maya almost laughed at that. Patience. That soft, little word people used after harm, as if waiting quietly through disrespect were a virtue everyone should admire. Arthur leaned closer. "What?" She shook her head. "Nothing. No. Tell me." Maya kept her voice low. "I was just thinking how they always thank people for patience after they mistreat someone." Arthur said nothing. He simply looked toward the galley, where Captain Hayes had disappeared again, and where Brenda was no longer visible. It did not comfort him that she had been removed from passenger contact. Not enough. Not nearly enough. The engines rose. The aircraft turned onto the runway. Maya gripped the armrest with her free hand, not from fear of flying, but because her body was still carrying the memory of Brenda's grip. Arthur saw the movement. "Did she hurt your arm?" Maya glanced at her sleeve. "Not badly." "That's not what I asked." She gave him a tired look. "Arthur, I want to know." Maya pulled the sleeve back slightly. There were faint red marks where Brenda's fingers had pressed into her skin. Arthur stared at them. His face went still in a way Maya knew well. It was the look he had when he stopped being angry as a husband and started thinking as the head of an empire. "Don't," Maya said. His eyes lifted. "Don't. What?" "Don't turn into Arthur Whitmore, the chairman, before you. Remember, I'm sitting right here." That stopped him. Maya continued. "I need my husband first." The engines roared, pressing them back into their seats. For a few seconds, the whole cabin surrendered to the force of takeoff. Atlanta dropped beneath them. Runways shrinking into gray lines. Highways bending around the city. The morning opening wide below. Arthur held her hand the entire time. When the plane leveled, the seatbelt sign stayed on. No one seemed eager to move anyway. Margaret Ellis leaned toward Maya again. Her voice was careful. "Mrs. Whitmore, I know you don't owe me anything, but I'd like to give a statement when we land." Maya turned to her. Margaret continued. "I heard the words. I saw her grab you. I should have spoken sooner." Maya studied her face. Margaret was not young. She was the kind of Southern woman who likely owned church hats, casserole recipes, and memories she had spent years editing to make herself comfortable. But shame, when it finally arrived honestly, had a way of aging a person in minutes. Maya said, "Why didn't you?" Margaret's eyes filled. "Because I told myself it wasn't my place." Maya nodded slowly. "That's what people always say." "I know. No, Maya said. You know it now. Margaret took that without defending herself. Yes, ma'am. I know it now. Arthur watched the exchange quietly. He wanted to protect Maya from every apology that arrived too late. But he also knew she did not want him screening the world for her. From the galley, Denise approached with 2 bottles of water. Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Whitmore, Captain Hayes asked me to check on you personally. Arthur took 1 bottle and handed the other to Maya. Where is Miss Collins? Denise's expression tightened. She's seated in the forward jump seat for now. She won't be serving this cabin. Is she writing a report? I believe Captain Hayes instructed her to. Maya looked at Denise. Will that report say I refuse to cooperate? Denise hesitated. Just briefly. But Maya saw it. Arthur saw it too. Miss Carter. Denise straightened. Sir, I don't know what Miss Collins will write. Maya said. That's not what I asked. Denise took a quiet breath. Captain Hayes asked Evan for a statement as well. And the gate supervisor's report has already been filed. The scan record shows your seat was valid. Maya nodded. Thank you. Denise lowered her voice. For what it's worth, I'm sorry this happened. Maya opened the water bottle. I don't need everyone to be sorry. I need people to be honest. Denise accepted that with a small nod and moved on. Arthur leaned back in his seat. I'm calling Richard Hale when we land. Maya said. No. Arthur turned. No? You're calling him now. Arthur watched her. And for the first time since Brenda had snatched the ticket, Maya's eyes carried something sharper than pain. She said, if they can document me as a problem before takeoff, you can document the truth before landing. Arthur's expression changed. Not surprise. Respect. The deep kind. He took out his phone and connected to the aircraft Wi-Fi. A few rows back, the man in 3C watched him now with the careful fear of someone realizing the story had moved far beyond gossip. Arthur typed 1 message to his executive assistant. Get Richard Hale on standby. Preserve all records on Crestline Flight 482. Passenger scan, crew assignments, prior complaints involving Brenda Collins. No delays. Then he paused and looked at Maya. Anything else? Maya looked down at the creased boarding pass in her lap. Yes. What? Find out how many times she's done this when nobody important was sitting beside the person she hurt. Arthur stared at her for a long moment. Then he typed the second message. Pull prior passenger complaints involving racial bias, seat disputes, and premium cabin removals. Start with the last 5 years. He sent it. Somewhere over the clouds, the story changed shape. It was no longer just about Maya's seat, or Brenda's insult, or the shocked silence of first class. It was becoming something larger, something with records, names, dates, and consequences. Maya folded the boarding pass once, carefully this time, and slipped it into her purse. Arthur noticed. You're putting it away? She nodded. I know where I belong. Then she looked out the window, past the wing, past the white clouds spread beneath them like cotton over a wound the country kept pretending had healed. And now, she said, so will they. The message left Arthur's phone, and for the first time since boarding, he felt the floor shift beneath the situation. Not the aircraft floor, the deeper one, the one under the company name, the polished uniforms, the rehearsed apologies, and the first-class smiles. Maya saw it in his face. You found something already? Arthur glanced at the screen. Not yet, but I know how fast people move when they're afraid of paper trails. Maya looked out at the clouds, then let them be afraid of the truth for once. Arthur did not answer right away. He had spent most of his adult life in rooms where powerful men used soft words to hide hard facts. Risk exposure, brand protection, internal review, legal sensitivity. He knew the language. He had used some of it himself. But looking at Maya's arm, at the faint red marks Brenda had left, all that language felt useless. A chime sounded. The seatbelt sign switched off. People began moving carefully, quietly, as if normal behavior might help erase what had happened. A man opened his laptop. The woman with pearl earrings took out a tissue. Someone in row 4 asked for black coffee in a voice too soft to be natural. Denise Carter came through with the service cart. Mrs. Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore. Would you like breakfast? Arthur looked at Maya. Maya gave a small shake of her head. Just coffee, please. Cream? No sugar. Denise nodded. Of course. Arthur said. Same for me. Black. Denise poured the coffee with steady hands, but Maya noticed the way she glanced toward the forward galley. Brenda was seated on the jump seat there, facing sideways, her arms folded tightly across her chest. She was no longer serving, but she was still close enough to be felt. Maya took the cup. Thank you, Denise. Denise paused. You're welcome, ma'am. That simple ma'am landed differently. Not as performance, not as correction, just respect. Arthur's phone buzzed. He read the message, and his expression hardened. Maya watched him. Arthur. He handed her the phone without a word. The message was from his executive assistant, Caroline. Richard Hale is being notified. Preliminary search shows 3 prior passenger complaints naming Brenda Collins. All involved passengers of color in premium cabins. Details coming. Maya stared at the words. 3 prior complaints. The coffee cup warmed her hand, but her fingers went cold. She did this before, Maya said. Arthur's voice was quiet. Looks like it. And they kept her up here. Yes. Maya gave the phone back. Then this was never just about me. Arthur looked toward the galley. No. Across the aisle, Margaret Ellis leaned in slightly. Mrs. Whitmore? Maya turned. I don't mean to intrude, Margaret said. But did you say there were other complaints? Arthur's eyes narrowed. Miss Ellis, I don't think. It's all right, Maya said. She looked at Margaret. There may have been. Margaret pressed her lips together. My husband used to tell me, institutions don't become cruel all at once. They practice. Maya studied her. Was he a lawyer? A pastor, Margaret said. Small Baptist church outside Savannah. He spent half his life trying to get people to do the right thing before they were forced to. Maya softened slightly. Sounds like a good man. He was. Margaret looked down at her hands. Better than I was this morning. Maya did not rescue her from that sentence. A few rows back, the man in 3C closed his laptop and rubbed his forehead. The silence had begun to work on people. That was the thing about silence after truth. It did not stay comfortable for long. Evan walked up the aisle holding a notepad. He stopped beside Arthur and Maya. I wrote the statement, he said. Captain Hayes has a copy. Arthur took it. May I? Evan nodded. Arthur read quickly. Maya watched his eyes move. When he finished, he handed it to her. Evan Miller's statement. Passenger Maya William boarded Flight 482 at Atlanta with valid first-class boarding pass. Scanner displayed green. Seat confirmed 2A. I witnessed lead flight attendant Brenda Collins question passenger's right to sit in seat after boarding. I did not witness any system error. I later witnessed Miss Collins holding passenger's boarding pass and refusing to examine passenger ID. I failed to intervene. Maya read the last sentence twice. I failed to intervene. She looked at Evan. You put that in there yourself? Yes, ma'am. Why? His voice shook a little. Because if I leave that part out, I'm just making myself look better. Arthur's expression eased by the smallest degree. Maya handed the paper back. Keep telling the truth like that, even when it costs you. Evan nodded. I will. Before he could step away, Brenda's voice came from the galley. Evan, do not discuss internal statements with passengers. Captain Hayes's voice followed immediately. Miss Collins, remain seated. Brenda went quiet, but not before everyone heard the bitterness in her tone. Arthur turned toward the galley. Captain, Hayes came forward. Mr. Whitmore, she is not to speak to my wife again during this flight. Captain Hayes nodded. Understood, Maya said. Arthur, he looked at her. I can speak for myself. I know. Then let me. Arthur took a breath. You're right. Maya turned her head toward the galley, where Brenda sat pale and stiff. Miss Collins. Brenda looked up slowly. Maya's voice carried, but it was not loud. Do not speak about me like I am not here. You did enough of that when I was sitting in front of you. Brenda swallowed. Mrs. Whitmore. No, Maya said. Not now. Brenda closed her mouth. Captain Hayes gave Maya a respectful nod and returned to the galley. Arthur leaned closer. I'm sorry. Maya gave him a tired half smile. For what? For stepping in too much. You're angry. I'm beyond angry. I know. She looked down at her coffee. But I need you beside me, not in front of me. Arthur nodded. Beside you. That's where you've always been best. For the first time that morning, something human passed between them that had nothing to do with Brenda, Crestline, or the cabin. Arthur reached for Maya's hand again, and this time she took it first. The plane moved steadily north. Beneath them, the south gave way to the coast, the land broken by rivers and thin white roads. Flight attendants whispered in the galley. Passengers pretended to work. But the story had already escaped the shape Brenda tried to give it. Arthur's phone buzzed again. He read the new message, then showed Maya. Prior complaints. One black physician asked for ID twice after boarding first class. One Latina executive accused of using companion upgrade fraudulently. One retired black judge told he might be more comfortable in economy. All marked resolved. No disciplinary action recorded. Maya closed her eyes. Arthur said, Maya? She opened them slowly. A doctor. An executive. A judge. Yes. And still, none of them were enough. Arthur understood what she meant. Not enough to change the system. Not enough to protect the next person. Not enough to keep Brenda from standing over Maya with a stolen ticket in her hand, calling her a thief. Maya looked toward the front of the cabin. They weren't ignored because their stories were unclear. They were ignored because the airline decided their pain was manageable. Arthur's voice went low. That ends today. Maya looked at him. No, it starts today. Arthur waited. She continued. Ending it is what happens after they can't hide from it anymore. The words stayed between them. A few minutes later, Denise approached again. Mrs. Whitmore, Captain Hayes wanted me to let you know ground operations will meet the aircraft at JFK. Mr. Hale has been contacted. Arthur said. Good. Maya asked. Will Miss Collins still be on board when we land? Denise hesitated. Yes, ma'am. But she won't be working the cabin. Maya nodded. Then she can hear what happens next. Denise did not know how to respond, so she simply said, Yes, ma'am, and walked away. Arthur looked at Maya, and there was pride in his eyes, but also worry. You don't have to carry everyone else's story. Maya turned toward the window. I know. Then why are you? She watched the clouds pass beneath the wing. Because someone carried mine before I was born, she said. My mother, my father, people whose names never made it into reports, people who swallowed things they should have been allowed to spit back out. Arthur said nothing. Maya looked at him. I'm not carrying all of it. Just enough to make them stop pretending it isn't heavy. Arthur's phone buzzed one more time. This time, the message was from Richard Hale himself. Mr. Whitmore, I am aware there was a service issue on Flight 482. I'll personally meet you on arrival and make sure Mrs. Whitmore receives appropriate care. Arthur read it aloud. Maya's eyes hardened at two words. Service issue. Arthur typed back slowly, letting Maya watch every word. This was not a service issue. My wife was racially profiled, accused of theft, physically grabbed, and threatened with removal after presenting valid documentation. Meet us at the gate with legal, compliance, and operations. Preserve every record. He hit send. Maya took a sip of coffee. It had gone lukewarm. Now, she said, we're speaking their language. Richard Hale did not answer right away. Arthur watched the small gray typing bubble appear, disappear, then appear again. That hesitation told him more than the message would. People like Richard Hale were fast when the problem was small, and careful when the truth was large. Maya saw Arthur staring at the screen. He's thinking about lawyers now. Arthur looked at her. Probably. No, Maya said. Definitely. A minute later, the reply came. Mr. Whitmore. Understood. I'll have legal and compliance present upon arrival. We take this matter seriously. Arthur read it aloud. Maya gave a short, tired laugh. Now it's a matter, Arthur said. Better than a service concern. Still smaller than what it was. Arthur slipped the phone into his jacket pocket. Then we'll keep making it bigger until it reaches the size of the truth. Maya looked at him then. really looked at him. Arthur Whitmore, billionaire, investor, man used to walking into rooms where people rose before he spoke, but beside her, he was simply her husband, angry enough to burn down an empire and disciplined enough to wait for evidence before striking the match. She reached for his hand. Arthur, yes, when we land, I don't want you to make this only about me. His face tightened. It happened to you. It happened through me, she said. But it didn't start with me. Arthur nodded slowly. The prior complaints, the doctor, the executive, the judge, whoever else never got a headline. Maya looked toward the front galley. Brenda didn't get that comfortable in one morning. Arthur followed her gaze. Brenda sat stiffly on the jump seat, her face turned toward the opposite wall. She looked smaller now, but Maya knew better than to confuse fear with remorse. Fear worried about consequences. Remorse understood harm. Arthur said, I'll ask Richard for the complete complaint history. You won't ask, Maya said. You'll demand. A faint smile touched Arthur's mouth. Yes, ma'am. Maya almost smiled back, but the ache in her arm pulled her back into the moment. She rubbed the spot gently through her sleeve. Arthur saw it. We should have a medical report made when we land. It's just a mark. It's evidence. It's my arm first. That stopped him again. He lowered his voice. You're right. Maya softened. I know you're trying to protect me. I am, but don't turn every part of me into a legal document before I've had time to feel it. Arthur's anger folded inward. I'm sorry. I'm not asking you to be sorry. I'm asking you to stay with me. He took her hand again. I'm here, behind them. A throat cleared. Maya turned and saw Margaret Ellis leaning slightly across the aisle, a small notebook open on her lap. Her pen trembled in her hand. Mrs. Whitmore, Margaret said. I wrote down what I remember. I don't want to wait until we land and forget something important. Maya looked at the notebook. May I hear it? Margaret nodded and read, her voice thin but steady. I was seated across the aisle in first class. I saw Miss Collins take the boarding pass from Mrs. Whitmore's hand. I heard her ask if the ticket was stolen. I heard her say people like Mrs. Whitmore did not deserve to sit there. Mrs. Whitmore offered identification. Miss Collins refused to check it. Miss Collins grabbed Mrs. Whitmore by the arm and pulled her up from the seat. Margaret stopped. Her eyes were wet. Maya waited. Margaret continued, softer now. I did not speak up when I should have. Maya looked at her for a long moment. Keep that sentence in. Margaret nodded. I will, Arthur said. Thank you, Miss Ellis. Margaret closed the notebook. My husband used to say the truth has to cost you something, or else it's just talk. Maya's expression shifted. Your husband was right. In row 3, the man who had laughed earlier stared at his phone, pretending not to listen. Arthur turned slightly. Sir, the man looked up with dread. Yes? You heard Miss Ellis. I did. Do you intend to provide a statement? The man shifted. I don't know what I can add. Maya spoke before Arthur did. You can add what you laughed at. His face reddened. I didn't mean anything by it, Maya said. People rarely do, until someone asks them to explain. He looked down at his hands. I heard the attendant accuse you. I heard her say you didn't deserve to sit here. And, he swallowed. And I laughed. No one spoke. He looked at Maya. I'm sorry. Maya held his gaze. Write it down. The man nodded slowly. Okay. Denise came through the cabin collecting cups. She moved carefully around Maya, not with fear, but with a kind of respect that made space. When she reached Arthur, she leaned in slightly. Mr. Whitmore, Captain Hayes asked me to tell you we've begun descent planning. About 35 minutes to JFK, Arthur said. Has Brenda filed her report? Denise's mouth tightened. She submitted one to the captain. Maya noticed the hesitation. What did she call it? Denise looked uncomfortable. Arthur's voice sharpened. Miss Carter. Denise lowered her voice. She described it as a passenger compliance issue. Maya closed her eyes for 1 second. Arthur said, Of course she did. Denise quickly added, Captain Hayes rejected that wording. He asked her to rewrite it with factual details. Maya opened her eyes. And did she? I don't know yet. Arthur leaned back. She'll try to survive the report. Maya looked toward the galley. No. She'll try to bury me in it. That sentence settled hard. Maya had seen it before. Not in airplanes, but in hospitals, boardrooms, schools, stores. First came the harm. Then came the paperwork that made the harmed person sound unstable, difficult, aggressive, confused. A clean report could make a dirty act look reasonable. Arthur's phone buzzed again. This time, the message was from Caroline. Richard Hale has requested that communications remain internal until arrival. Legal appears concerned about passenger video. At least 2 passengers may have recorded part of the incident. Arthur showed Maya. Maya read it, then looked back at him. Passenger video. Yes, that's what they're afraid of? That, and you. Maya shook her head. No. They're afraid strangers might believe me before they finish rewriting me. Arthur did not answer. He knew she was right. The plane dipped slightly, and the seatbelt sign came on with a soft chime. Captain Hayes' voice followed. Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our initial descent into New York. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. The cabin obeyed quietly. No one complained now. Even the man in row 3 closed his laptop without a word. Maya fastened her seatbelt. Arthur did the same. After a moment, he asked, "What are you thinking?" Maya looked out the window. The clouds had thinned, and below them the coastline appeared in broken silver lines. "I'm thinking about my mother." Arthur's face softened. What would she say? Maya smiled faintly, though her eyes shone. She'd say, "Baby, don't let them make you loud just so they can call you angry." Arthur nodded. Sounds like her. She'd also say, "But don't you dare let them make you quiet either." Arthur squeezed her hand. Maya looked down at their joined hands, his skin pale against hers. A picture the world had judged in different ways depending on who was looking. Some saw love. Some saw money. Some saw a question they felt entitled to ask. But Maya knew what it was. Years of choosing each other in rooms that did not always make space for both of them. Arthur said, "When we land, I'll follow your lead." Maya turned to him. "Say that again." "I'll follow your lead." She nodded. "Good." From the galley, Brenda's voice rose briefly. "Captain, I really think Mr. Hale should hear my side before any action is taken." Captain Hayes replied, firm and low, "He will receive the report." "Sit down, Brenda." Maya heard the fear in Brenda's voice now. Not the fear Maya had felt when her arm was grabbed. Not the fear of being powerless. Brenda's fear was different. It was the fear of a person who had always believed the uniform would protect her, suddenly realizing it might become evidence. Arthur looked toward the front. "She still doesn't understand." Maya said, "She understands enough to be scared." "That's not the same." "No," Maya said. "It isn't." The aircraft descended through a thin layer of cloud. Sunlight flashed white across the window, then softened. New York appeared beneath them in pieces. Water, bridges, rooftops, long roads filled with morning traffic. Maya's phone, which had been in airplane mode, sat dark in her purse. In a few minutes, it would wake up to messages from the world she had been flying toward. The gala organizer, her assistant, maybe a reminder about the speech she was supposed to give that night. A speech about dignity. The irony was so sharp she almost laughed. Arthur noticed. "What?" "My speech tonight," Maya said. "It's about children knowing they belong in every room they enter." Arthur's eyes held hers. "Still is." "No," Maya said. "Now it's about adults remembering it too." The landing gear lowered with a heavy mechanical sound. Several passengers shifted in their seats. Margaret gripped her notebook. Evan stood strapped into a rear-facing jump seat, staring straight ahead. Brenda sat rigid in the galley, her face pale, her future waiting at the gate. Arthur looked at Maya. "Ready?" Maya took one slow breath. "No," she said honestly. Then she straightened her shoulders and looked toward the front of the plane. "But I'm not afraid of the gate." The plane dropped lower over New York, carrying with it a creased boarding pass, a written statement, 3 buried complaints, and a truth that could no longer be kept in first class. The wheels touched down at JFK with a hard, breath-stealing bump. The cabin jolted, then steadied as the aircraft roared down the runway. No one clapped. No one joked about the landing. First class sat in a silence too aware of itself. Every passenger waiting for the moment the plane would stop, and the truth would meet the people waiting at the gate. Maya kept her eyes forward. Arthur looked at her. "Still with me?" Maya nodded. "I'm here. That's not what I asked." She turned slightly. "I'm still with myself. That's what matters." Arthur gave the smallest nod. "Fair." The plane slowed, turned off the runway, and began its long taxi toward the terminal. Phones lit up all around the cabin as passengers switched off airplane mode. A dozen screens glowed in nervous hands. Maya heard the soft buzz of incoming messages, the clicking of seatbelts tested too early, the rustle of coats being pulled from laps. Then her own phone vibrated in her purse. She did not reach for it. Arthur noticed. "Do you want me to check it?" "No." "Do you want to turn it off?" "No." "What do you want?" Maya looked down at her hands. 5 quiet seconds before the world decides what happened to me. Arthur said nothing after that. Near the galley, Brenda sat strapped into the jump seat, pale and rigid. She had not looked at Maya since descent began. Her earlier sharpness was gone, replaced by the brittle stillness of someone rehearsing explanations and finding none that sounded safe. Evan sat across from her, his notepad folded in his lap. He looked at the floor, then at Maya, then back down. Finally, he spoke quietly. "Brenda." She did not answer. Evan tried again. "Brenda, why didn't you just check the ID?" Her eyes cut toward him. "Not now. It would have taken 5 seconds." "I said not now." Evan's voice shook, but he did not stop. "You told me once that first class is about instinct. Maybe that was the problem." Brenda stared at him. "Careful, Evan." He looked at her then. Really looked at her. "I should have been careful with the truth. Not with you." For once, Brenda had no reply. The plane rolled closer to the gate. Captain Hayes came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until we have reached the gate and the captain has turned off the seatbelt sign. We know many of you have connections and appointments, and we appreciate your cooperation." His pause was brief, but everyone felt it. Then he added, "First-class passengers will remain seated until ground personnel board the aircraft." A low murmur moved through the cabin. The man in 3C muttered, "You've got to be kidding." Arthur turned around. The man stopped. Maya did not look back. She only said, "Now delay bothers him." Margaret Ellis heard it and closed her eyes. At the gate, the aircraft stopped with a final mechanical shudder. The seatbelt sign stayed on. Outside the window, a jet bridge rolled slowly toward the door. Maya watched a ground worker in an orange vest guide it into place. Ordinary work. Ordinary morning. The kind of ordinary that made what had happened feel even more brutal. Arthur's phone buzzed again. He checked it. Richard Hale is outside, with legal and compliance. Maya finally picked up her own phone. The screen filled with messages. Her assistant. "Safe flight? Car is waiting at JFK. The gala coordinator. Excited to see you tonight. Speech check at 3. A friend from Atlanta. Saw your flight left late. Everything okay?" Maya stared at the last message longer than the others. Arthur asked, "Everything okay?" She let out a breath. That's always the question, isn't it? Before Arthur could answer, the aircraft door opened. Cold terminal air slipped into the cabin. Captain Hayes stepped out of the cockpit and stood at the front. His posture was formal, but his face showed the weight of the morning. "Mrs. Whitmore?" "Mr. Whitmore. Ground operations is ready." Arthur unbuckled. "Maya?" She remained seated for a moment, not because she was afraid, but because she wanted to choose the second she stood. Brenda had pulled her up before. This time, Maya would rise on her own. She unbuckled, picked up her purse, and stood. Arthur stood beside her. Brenda looked up from the jump seat. Her lips parted. "Mrs. Whitmore." Maya turned toward her. Brenda swallowed. "I'm sorry." The words were small, too small for the cabin they tried to cross. Maya looked at her for a long moment. "Are you sorry for what you did, or sorry for who saw it?" Brenda's eyes filled. "I made a mistake." Maya shook her head. "You made a decision. A mistake is when you misread a seat number. You looked at me and decided I was a crime. Brenda's face crumpled, but Maya did not stay to watch it. She turned and walked toward the door with Arthur beside her. At the front of the aircraft, Richard Hale stood in the jet bridge with two people behind him, a woman in a Navy suit holding a leather folder, and a man with a compliance badge clipped to his jacket. Richard was in his 50s, silver-haired, polished in the way corporate men became when they had spent years apologizing without admitting anything. "Mr. Whitmore," Richard said quickly. "Mrs. Whitmore, I want to personally apologize for the experience you had this morning." Arthur's voice was flat. "The experience?" Richard paused. "For the incident." Maya stepped forward before Arthur could speak. "Mr. Hale, let's not start with words that make this smaller." Richard looked at her then, really looked at her. "You're right, Mrs. Whitmore. What happened to you was unacceptable." "Unacceptable is still easy," Maya said. "Try specific." The woman in the Navy suit lifted her pen but did not write yet. Richard took a breath. "You were wrongfully accused of stealing your ticket. You were physically grabbed. Your valid identification was ignored. And based on the information we have so far, you were racially profiled by a Crestline employee." Maya held his gaze. "That belongs in writing." "It will," Arthur said. "It already should be." Richard nodded. "Yes, it should." The compliance officer spoke for the first time. "Mrs. Whitmore, we have preserved the scan records and captain's report. We'll also pull crew history and prior passenger complaints." Arthur's eyes sharpened. "You'll pull them? Or you already have?" The officer hesitated. "We've begun," Arthur said. "My office found 3 before landing." Richard's face changed slightly. Not surprise exactly. More like confirmation of something he wished Arthur had not found first. Maya caught it. "You knew." Richard looked at her. "I didn't know the details." "That's not what I said." The jet bridge went quiet. Maya continued. "Did you know complaints existed?" Richard's silence lasted 1 second too long. Arthur's voice lowered. "Answer her." Richard looked pained. "I was aware there had been prior service complaints involving Miss Collins." Maya nodded slowly. "Service complaints." The woman in the Navy suit finally began writing. Maya said, "There's that language again. Service issue, service concern, service complaint. You all have so many soft places to bury hard things." Richard looked down. "Mrs. Whitmore, I understand your anger." "No," Maya said. "You understand exposure. My anger is older than this morning." Arthur stood beside her, silent, letting every word land where it needed to. Behind them, passengers inside the cabin listened. No one was pretending now. Margaret Ellis stood near row 2, notebook in hand. Evan remained by the galley, pale but attentive. The man in 3C held his phone low, no longer recording, just staring. Richard said, "We're prepared to offer immediate accommodations, a private lounge, medical attention if needed, and direct transportation to wherever you're headed." Maya looked at Arthur, then back at Richard. "I'm headed to a fundraiser where I'm supposed to tell children they belong in rooms that weren't built for them." Richard had no answer. Maya continued. "So before I step off this jet bridge, I want to know what happens to Brenda Collins today." Richard turned toward the open aircraft door. Captain Hayes stood there, watching. Richard said, "Pending investigation. She will be removed from duty immediately." Arthur said, "Not enough." Richard nodded. "Her badge will be deactivated. She will not work another flight while the investigation is open." Maya asked, "And the report?" The compliance officer answered, "It will identify racial bias, wrongful accusation, physical contact, and failure to follow verification procedure." Maya looked at him. "Say my name in it." He blinked. "Ma'am, say my name. Not the passenger. Not the female traveler. Maya William. I am tired of becoming vague. The moment someone harms me." The woman in the Navy suit wrote quickly. Richard said, "Yes, Mrs. Whitmore. Your name will be included." Maya turned toward the cabin one last time. Brenda was visible through the doorway, still seated, still pale. For the first time all morning, the uniform did not make her look powerful. It made her look accountable. Maya faced Richard again. "Then start there." Arthur offered her his arm. She took it, but she did not lean on him. Together, they walked down the jet bridge toward New York, leaving behind a cabin full of people who had watched a woman be accused, watched her stand, and now watched a company begin to understand that some truths do not stay in the air. The jet bridge felt colder than the cabin. Maya noticed it right away, the way the air changed from recycled warmth to the sharp chill of a New York terminal. People moved beyond the glass walls with rolling bags and paper coffee cups, rushing toward gates, meetings, family visits, funerals, weddings, lives that had not been interrupted by a woman being called a thief before breakfast. Richard Hale walked beside Maya and Arthur, careful not to step ahead of them. The compliance officer followed with his tablet. The woman in the navy suit, who introduced herself as Diane Porter from Crestline Legal, stayed close enough to hear every word but far enough to avoid looking like a guard. Arthur noticed the distance. "Miss Porter, you can walk with us. This isn't a crime scene." Diane's face tightened. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore." Maya glanced at Arthur. "It is a crime scene. In one way." Arthur turned to her. Maya said, "Just not the kind they usually tape off." No one answered. Richard looked like a man trying to swallow a stone. At the end of the jet bridge, 2 airport staff members stood waiting. One held a wheelchair. Maya stopped when she saw it. Richard said quickly, "Mrs. Whitmore, we wanted to offer medical assistance if you needed. I didn't ask for a wheelchair." "No, ma'am. It's only a courtesy." Maya looked at the chair, then back at Richard. "A courtesy would have been checking my ID." Richard nodded, embarrassed. "You're right. We'll have it removed." Arthur's voice stayed even. "Medical evaluation can be offered without staging her like a victim." Diane made a note. Maya noticed. "Don't write that like it came from him." Diane looked up. "Pardon? I said it first." He agreed. Diane paused, then nodded. "Understood, Mrs. Whitmore." They walked into a quiet side corridor away from the main flow of passengers. Through the glass, Maya could see travelers moving freely, unaware. A little boy in a Yankees cap ran ahead of his grandmother. A man in a Mets jacket balanced 2 coffees. An older black couple walked slowly together, the husband carrying both bags while the wife adjusted his scarf. Maya watched them for half a second longer than the others. She wondered how many times people like them had swallowed disrespect at ticket counters, hotels, hospitals, banks, because they had someplace to be and no powerful name to force the world to stop. Richard led them into a private conference room near the gate. It had gray carpet, a long table, bottled water, a wall-mounted screen, and the sterile look of a place designed for problems that needed to be contained. Maya sat, but not at the end of the table. She chose the middle chair. Arthur sat beside her. Richard remained standing. "Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Whitmore, before anything else, I want to say again how deeply sorry we are." Maya folded her hands. "Who is we?" Richard blinked. "Crestline Airways. That's a company. I'm asking who in this room is sorry." Richard absorbed that. Then he pulled out a chair and sat across from her. "I am sorry. I'm sorry this happened on an aircraft under my region. I'm sorry a member of our crew treated you that way. And I'm sorry the system did not stop her before today." Maya looked at him carefully. "That last part matters." "I know. Do you?" Richard exhaled. "I'm beginning to." Arthur leaned forward. "Beginning is not a defense." "No, sir. It isn't." Diane placed a recorder on the table. "Mrs. Whitmore, with your permission, we'd like to record your statement." Maya looked at the device. "No." Diane froze. "No? You'll get a statement, but not before I get copies of what already exists," Richard said. "Mrs. Whitmore, some internal documents." Arthur cut in. "Don't." Richard stopped. Maya turned to Arthur. "I've got it." He sat back. Maya faced Richard again. "I want the boarding scan record, showing my seat was valid. I want Captain Hayes's report. I want Evan Miller's statement. I want the gate supervisor's report. I want Brenda Collins' original report and any revised version. And I want confirmation that cabin crew communication has been preserved," Diane said carefully. "Some of that may need to go through legal review." Maya nodded. "Review it fast." Arthur added, My attorneys will request it formally within the hour. Richard looked at Diane. Diane gave a small nod, the kind lawyers use when the answer is bad but unavoidable. Richard said, "We can provide preservation confirmation immediately. Copies may require process." Maya said, "Process did not matter when your employee grabbed me." The room went quiet. Arthur looked at Richard. "You should understand something. My wife is not here to be soothed. She is here to make sure the record starts clean." Richard nodded. "Understood." There was a knock at the door. Carl Jensen, the gate supervisor from Atlanta, appeared on the video screen, mounted on the wall. His face was tense, his collar slightly crooked. Richard pressed a button. "Carl, we're here with Mrs. Whitmore and Mr. Whitmore." Carl leaned toward his camera. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm sorry again. I filed the initial gate report as instructed." Maya asked, "What did you call what happened?" Carl looked down at something on his desk. "Wrongful passenger accusation, failure to verify documentation, physical contact by crew, and racial bias concern." Maya held his gaze through the screen. "Concern?" Carl corrected himself quickly. "Racial bias." Richard glanced at Diane. Diane wrote again. Arthur asked, "Did the scan show any problem with her boarding pass?" Carl replied, "No, sir. Passenger, Maya William, seat 2A, first class, scanned valid at boarding." Maya said, "Say that again." Carl looked confused. Maya's voice stayed calm. "Say my name, my seat, and that it was valid." Carl nodded. "Passenger Maya William, seat 2A, first class, scanned valid at boarding." Maya sat back. "Thank you." The door opened again, and Captain Hayes stepped in. His cap was tucked under one arm. Evan Miller followed behind him, eyes red but steady. Brenda was not with them. Richard stood. "Captain." Hayes nodded. "Mr. Hale. Mrs. Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore." Maya noticed he addressed her before Arthur. That mattered. Captain Hayes placed 2 printed pages on the table. My preliminary report and Mr. Miller's witness statement. Diane reached for them, but Maya spoke first. "May I?" The captain handed them directly to her. Maya read in silence. Arthur watched her face, not the pages. When she reached Evan's statement, her eyes paused again on the final line. "I failed to intervene." Evan stood near the door. "I left it in." Maya looked up. "Good." Evan's voice was quiet. "I wish I had done more than write it after." "So do I," Maya said. He accepted that without flinching. "Yes, ma'am." Richard asked Captain Hayes, "Where is Miss Collins?" Hayes answered, "Removed from passenger duty. Airport security escorted her to the crew office. Her badge access has been temporarily suspended, pending instruction." Arthur looked at Richard. "Temporarily," Richard said. "For the moment. Formal action requires HR and union notification." Maya watched him. "There's process again." Richard did not defend it this time. "Yes, but this process is moving." Arthur said, "It better run." Diane folded her hands. "Mrs. Whitmore, may I ask whether you intend to seek medical attention for your arm?" Maya looked at her sleeve. The marks had faded slightly but were still there. "I'll have it photographed," Maya said, and examined. Diane nodded. "We can arrange." "My doctor will arrange it," Maya said. Arthur almost smiled. Diane did not. Richard leaned forward. "Mrs. Whitmore, is there anything you need right now?" Maya looked at the table, the water bottles, the legal pad, the recorder still turned off. Then she looked at the people seated across from her. "Yes," she said. "I need everyone in this room to stop acting like the worst part is that this happened to Arthur Whitmore's wife." Richard lowered his eyes. Maya continued, "The worst part is that it happened easily. She didn't hesitate. The passengers didn't interrupt. The junior attendant knew and stayed quiet. Your system had complaints and kept her in that cabin. That means what happened to me was not an accident. It was allowed." No one spoke. Arthur's face was still, but his eyes carried the full weight of pride and grief. Maya stood. "I have a fundraiser tonight. Children will be there. Families who saved for bus tickets. Mothers who work double shifts. Fathers who wear their best suit even when the sleeves are too short. I'm not walking into that room carrying your soft version of what happened. Richard stood too. You won't have to. Maya looked at him. We'll see. Arthur rose beside her. Send the preservation notice to my office now. All of it. Diane nodded. Within 15 minutes. Arthur said, 10. Maya touched his arm. 15 is fine if it's complete. Diane said, it will be complete. As they walked out of the conference room, Evan stepped aside to let them pass. Mrs. Whitmore, he said. Maya stopped. I know an apology doesn't fix it, but I want you to know I'm going to tell the truth when they ask again. Maya looked at him. Tell it before they ask. Evan nodded, the words landing where they needed to. Maya and Arthur stepped into the terminal. The noise of JFK rushed back around them. Rolling suitcases, gate announcements, children asking for snacks, the hiss of espresso machines from a nearby coffee stand. Life moving on, as it always did after someone else's pain. Arthur looked at Maya. Car is downstairs. Maya adjusted the strap of her old brown purse on her shoulder. Good. You want to go to the hotel? She thought about it. No. Arthur waited. Maya looked toward the wide terminal windows, where planes rose into the gray New York sky one after another. I want to go to the venue, she said. If I'm going to speak about dignity tonight, I need to remember who I'm speaking for. The car waiting outside JFK was black, quiet, and too polished for the mood inside it. Arthur opened the door for Maya, but she paused before getting in. The terminal traffic moved around them in restless waves. Taxis, shuttle buses, drivers holding cardboard signs, travelers dragging luggage over cracked pavement. A woman in a navy coat shouted into her phone. A father lifted a sleeping child into a rideshare. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed, like the morning had not split open for anyone. Maya stood there with her brown purse on her shoulder, her cream sweater still smooth, her posture still composed. But Arthur could see the small things now, the way she held her left arm closer to her body, the way her thumb brushed the place where Brenda had grabbed her, the way her eyes kept moving, not in fear, but in memory. Maya, Arthur said gently, we can go to the hotel first. She shook her head. No. The venue. You don't have to prove anything today. She looked at him. I know. Then why go straight there? Because if I sit alone in a hotel room right now, I'll hear her voice louder than my own. Arthur had no argument for that. They got into the car. The driver, a gray-haired man named Leonard who had worked with Arthur for years, glanced in the mirror. Good morning, Mr. Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore. Maya gave him a small smile. Morning, Leonard. Leonard's eyes softened. He was old enough to know when a woman's morning carried more weight than it should. Straight to the venue? Yes, Arthur said. Harlem Civic Hall. Leonard nodded and pulled into traffic. For several minutes, no one spoke. The city passed by in pieces. Airport ramps, billboards, brick buildings, early commuters, food carts sending steam into the cold air. Maya watched Queens slide past the window, thinking of every person moving through the day with some private hurt tucked under a coat. Arthur's phone buzzed again. Maya did not look at him. Caroline? Yes. What now? Arthur read silently first. His expression changed. Maya turned. Arthur, he exhaled. Passenger video is already circulating internally. Someone on the plane sent it to a friend at Crestline. Legal is trying to keep it contained. Maya laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Contained. Like smoke. Arthur kept reading. Caroline says a clip may already be online. It doesn't show everything, but it has Brenda saying, people like you don't deserve to sit here. Maya closed her eyes. Arthur lowered the phone. I'm sorry. For what? For the world seeing it. Maya opened her eyes and looked out the window. The world sees black pain all the time. It just doesn't always care. Arthur sat with that. After a moment, Maya said, does the video show her grabbing me? Caroline isn't sure. Does it show my ID on the seat? No. Then it shows the wound, not the whole weapon. Arthur looked at her. That's why the documents matter. Yes. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Arthur glanced at the screen. Richard Hale. Maya held out her hand. Speaker. Arthur accepted the call and put it on speaker. Richard. Richard's voice came through tight and polished. Mr. Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore. I wanted to update you directly. We are placing Brenda Collins on immediate administrative suspension, pending a full investigation. Maya stared at the phone. Administrative suspension. Yes, Mrs. Whitmore. Effective immediately. Paid or unpaid. A pause. Richard said. At this stage, standard procedure places her on paid leave until HR review. Arthur's face hardened. That will not hold, Richard said quickly. We are reviewing all options. Maya leaned closer to the phone. Mr. Hale, this is not an option problem. It's a truth problem. She accused me of theft. She put her hands on me. She ignored my ID and your system, and your records show this was not the first time. Richard's silence told her she had struck the right place. Arthur said, How many complaints? Richard hesitated. We're still reviewing. Arthur's voice turned cold. How many have you found? Richard sighed softly. 5. Involving Brenda Collins over the last 4 years. 3 directly tied to premium cabin seating disputes. 2 involving alleged racial comments or differential treatment. Maya's jaw tightened. 5. Yes. And how many were marked resolved? Another pause. All of them. Maya looked at Arthur. Ask him what resolved means. Arthur did not need to. Richard heard her. In most cases, Richard said carefully, it means customer relations responded. Miles or vouchers may have been issued, and the complaint was closed. Maya said, So resolved means paid to disappear. Richard said, Mrs. Whitmore, no. Don't soften it. Did anyone interview the passengers? I don't have that information yet. Did anyone discipline Brenda? Not formally. According to the initial review. Did anyone warn future passengers? Richard said nothing. Maya leaned back, her voice quieter now. Then you didn't resolve anything. You stored the evidence and waited for the next person. Arthur watched her, pride and sorrow moving through his face at the same time. Richard said, Mrs. Whitmore, I understand how this looks. No, Maya said. You understand how it sounds on a recording. Arthur interrupted before Richard could turn that into another apology. Richard, send the preservation notice, the list of prior complaints, and the status of Brenda Collins's badge access to my office and to Mrs. Whitmore's counsel within the hour. Richard said, We can send preservation confirmation immediately. Complaint records may require. Arthur cut him off. Within the hour. Richard's voice lowered. Understood. Maya leaned toward the phone again. And Mr. Hale? Yes. Mrs. Whitmore? I do not want a private apology drafted by lawyers. We would never. You would. And you will try. I want the truth documented before anyone writes a sentence about regret. Richard went quiet. Arthur ended the call. The car crossed onto the highway. Maya turned her face toward the window again. The skyline was distant, gray-blue, under the morning light. Arthur said, You did well. Maya looked at him. I'm not performing. I know. That came out wrong. She softened slightly. I know what you meant. Leonard cleared his throat from the front seat. Mrs. Whitmore? Maya looked up. Yes? Leonard? I don't mean to speak out of place. You're not. He kept his eyes on the road. My wife flew alone to Chicago last year. First time since her hip surgery. She walks slow now. Gate agent told her she was holding up the line. Folks behind her sighed like she was doing it on purpose. She cried in the bathroom and didn't tell me till she got home. Maya's face changed. I'm sorry. Leonard nodded. Point is, sometimes they don't have to call you a name to make you feel like you don't belong. Sometimes, they just make the room tired of you. Maya sat very still. Arthur said, Leonard, did your wife file a complaint? No, sir. She said she didn't want trouble. Maya whispered, That's how they count on winning. Leonard looked at her in the mirror. Yes, ma'am. When the car reached Harlem, the streets felt different. Brownstones, churches, barbershops, small restaurants with hand-painted signs, elderly men standing outside a corner store as if they had been holding counsel there for decades, women in winter coats moving with purpose. A mural of children reading books under a painted sun. Maya sat up straighter. Arthur noticed. Home feeling? Not my home, Maya said. But something close. Harlem Civic Hall stood on a wide corner. An old building restored with new glass doors and brass handles. Banners hung outside for the evening event. Future Voices. Scholarship Gala. Underneath, in smaller letters, was Maya's foundation logo. A young event coordinator rushed out as the car pulled up. Her name was Allison, 28, efficient, nervous, and holding a tablet like a shield. Mrs. Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore. Thank goodness. We heard your flight was delayed. Is everything all right? Maya stepped out of the car before Arthur could answer. No. Allison froze. Oh. Maya adjusted her purse. But we're here. Allison looked from Maya to Arthur, sensing more than she understood. Do you need a private room? Yes, Arthur said. Maya said, in a minute. First, I want to see the hall. Allison nodded quickly. Of course. Inside, the venue smelled faintly of polished wood, coffee, and flowers. Volunteers were setting tables with white linens. A man tested microphones on stage. At the far wall, large photographs of scholarship recipients stood on easels. Smiling teenagers in graduation gowns. Young men in suits too big at the shoulders. Young women holding acceptance letters. Families crying beside them. Maya stopped in front of one photo. A girl with braids held a sign that read, I belong in the room. Arthur stood beside Maya. Quiet. Allison said softly. That's from last year's program. Her name is Nia. First in her family to go to college. Maya reached toward the photo, but did not touch it. Arthur said, This is why you came. Maya nodded. Yes. Her phone buzzed again. This time, Allison's phone buzzed too. Then Arthur's. Then one of the volunteers looked down at his screen and stopped moving. Allison's face went pale. Mrs. Whitmore. Arthur checked his phone. The video was online. The caption read, Flight attendant accuses black woman of stealing first-class ticket before realizing her husband is billionaire Arthur Whitmore. Maya stared at the screen, not pressing play. Arthur said quietly, We can control the response. Maya looked at the photo of Nia again. The girl's sign smiled back at her with words too innocent for what the world had done that morning. No, Maya said. We tell the truth before they control the lie. Arthur slipped the phone into his pocket. Allison whispered, Do you still want to speak tonight? Maya turned from the photo. Yes, she said. But I'm rewriting my speech. Allison led Maya and Arthur into a small green room behind the stage. It had a couch, a mirror lined with soft bulbs, a rack of programs for the evening, and a tray of coffee that no one had touched yet. Outside the door, the hall was alive with movement. Volunteers arranging flowers, caterers setting plates, sound technicians counting into microphones. Inside the room, the silence felt different. It had walls. Maya set her purse on the couch and took out the folded boarding pass. She placed it on the table beside a printed copy of her original speech. The two papers looked strange next to each other. One had almost taken her dignity. The other had been written to give dignity to children. Arthur watched her. Do you want me to call Dr. Mercer? Maya shook her head. After the speech, Maya, your arm. After the speech, she said again, not sharply, but firmly. Arthur nodded. All right. Allison stood near the door, uncertain whether to stay or leave. Mrs. Whitmore, the program starts at 7. You were scheduled to speak after the scholarship video. We can move things around if you need time. Maya looked at the printed speech. No, keep the schedule. Arthur said, Allison, can you give us a few minutes? Of course. Allison hesitated. And Mrs. Whitmore? Maya looked up. I'm sorry. I watched the clip. It made me sick. Maya's expression softened, but only a little. Thank you. Allison left and closed the door quietly. Arthur walked to the table. Have you watched it? Maya looked at the phone in his hand. No. Do you want to? No. Good. Maya glanced at him. You watched it? Arthur's jaw tightened. Part of it. What part? He looked away. What part, Arthur? He took a breath. The part where she pulled you up. Maya sat down slowly. Arthur spoke before she could. I shouldn't have watched it without asking you. That's not what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? I'm thinking strangers are going to replay the worst 5 minutes of my morning all day long. Arthur sat beside her. We can ask our team to push for removals. Maya shook her head. No. If it disappears, they'll say it wasn't that bad. If it stays, they'll use your pain for clicks. They already are. Arthur leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Then tell me what you want. Maya looked at the boarding pass. I want to speak before Crestline does. Arthur nodded. A statement? No, not a corporate statement. Mine. Arthur took out his phone. I'll get a camera crew. No. He stopped. No, I don't want lights. I don't want a backdrop. I don't want a polished apology next to a polished response. I want my phone, that wall, and my own words. Arthur almost smiled. You sure? I'm 30 years old, not made of glass. I never said you were. You keep calling doctors, lawyers, assistants, cameras, because I know how fast these things move. And I know how fast they move over the person it happened to. Arthur fell quiet. Maya reached for his hand. I need you, Arthur. I do. But I don't need to be managed. He looked at her hand over his. Understood. She picked up her phone and opened the camera. For a moment, she stared at her own reflection. She looked composed. That almost made her angry. People would see her calm face and imagine the wound was smaller because it did not look dramatic. Arthur stood. Where do you want me? Beside me. Not in the frame. He stepped to her side, just outside the shot. Maya pressed record. My name is Maya William, she said. This morning, on Crestline Airways Flight 482 from Atlanta to New York, a flight attendant took my boarding pass from my hand, accused me of stealing a first-class ticket, refused to check my ID, and grabbed my arm in front of an entire cabin. Some of you have seen a video. The video is painful, but it is not the whole truth. She paused, steadying her breath. The whole truth is that my ticket was valid. My ID was available. The system confirmed my seat, and none of that mattered to the person who had already decided I did not belong. Arthur looked down, his face tight. Maya continued, I am married to Arthur Whitmore. That fact changed what happened next. It should not have. I should not have needed a powerful husband for my documents to be believed. No one should need money, status, or a familiar last name to be treated like a human being. Her voice did not shake. That was not because she felt no pain. It was because her mother had raised her to speak from the center of herself when the world tried to push her to the edge. I am not asking people to hate one flight attendant. I am asking people to look at the system that made her comfortable. I am asking every person who has ever watched something wrong happen and stayed quiet to ask themselves why. I am asking companies to stop calling discrimination a misunderstanding after the damage is done. She looked into the camera. Respect should not come after proof. It should come first. She stopped recording. For a few seconds, the room was silent. Arthur said softly, That was perfect. Maya looked at the phone. No, it was true. She sent the video to Allison and to Arthur's communications director with one instruction. Post it exactly as it is. No edits. Within minutes, the statement was online. Maya did not watch the reactions. She placed the phone face down on the table. Arthur's phone buzzed almost immediately. Then again. Then again. He checked it. News outlets are picking it up. Maya closed her eyes. Already? Yes. What is Crestline saying? Arthur scrolled. Nothing yet. Maya opened her eyes. They're waiting to see how much truth they can survive. A knock came at the door. Allison stepped in, holding a tablet. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm sorry, but reporters are starting to show up outside. Not a lot yet, but enough. Arthur stood. Security, we've added staff at the front entrance. The families are arriving too. I don't want them overwhelmed. Maya stood. They won't be. Arthur looked at her. Maya. She picked up the boarding pass and slipped it into her purse. You said you'd follow my lead. I did. Then follow. They walked out of the green room and into the main hall. The first scholarship families had begun arriving. Mothers adjusted ties on sons. Grandfathers took pictures near the flower arrangements. A group of teenagers stood near the stage, whispering and laughing, their nervousness wrapped in excitement. A little girl, maybe 12, stood beside one of the photo displays, staring at Maya. Her mother nudged her gently, embarrassed. "Don't stare, baby," the woman whispered. Maya walked over. "It's all right." The girl looked up. "Are you the lady from the video?" Her mother's face went still. "I'm so sorry." Maya crouched slightly so she was closer to the girl's height. "Yes, I am." The girl frowned. Why was she so mean to you? The question entered Maya's chest like a small blade. Not because it was cruel, but because it was innocent. Children always found the cleanest doorway into the hardest truth. Maya said, "Because sometimes grown-ups forget that every person matters." The girl thought about that. "Even when they're wrong?" Maya nodded. "Especially then. That's when remembering matters most." The girl looked relieved, then serious. "My grandma says you don't have to be loud to be strong." Maya smiled for the first time that day. "Your grandma is a smart woman. She's here," the girl said, pointing toward an elderly black woman with silver hair and a cane. Maya looked over. The grandmother raised her hand in a small greeting, the kind of greeting older women gave when they had seen enough life to recognize a storm from across a room. Maya walked to her. The older woman said, "Baby, I saw that clip." Maya held her breath. The woman took Maya's hand. "You stood well." Those 3 words nearly undid her. Maya's eyes filled, but she did not cry. "Thank you." Maya's. 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 The woman squeezed her hand. "Don't let them make you spend the night proving pain. Tell these children what they came to hear." Maya nodded. Arthur stood a few feet away, watching. He understood something then that money had never taught him. There were forms of protection he could provide. Lawyers, records, pressure, consequences. But there were other forms Maya received from people who knew the road under her feet because they had walked it before her. Allison approached quietly. "Mrs. Whitmore, we're 10 minutes from starting." Maya looked around the hall, at the children, the parents, the grandparents, the volunteers, at Arthur, waiting beside her, not in front of her. "I need to change one thing in the program," Maya said. Allison lifted her tablet. "What is it?" "My speech title. What should it be?" Maya looked toward the stage, then down at her old brown purse, where the creased boarding pass rested inside like a witness. "Call it," she said. Before proof, Arthur's eyes met hers, and for the first time that day, Maya felt the morning begin to turn from something done to her into something she would use. The program began with music, not speeches. A soft piano version of "Lift Every Voice and Sing" filled Harlem Civic Hall, while families found their seats and volunteers guided scholarship students toward the front rows. The sound moved through the room gently, but it carried history in every note. Maya stood behind the side curtain and listened with one hand resting on the old brown purse at her hip. Arthur stood beside her. "You okay?" Maya looked at the stage lights spilling across the floor. "No," he nodded. "Want to leave?" "No." "Want me to say something before you go out?" She turned to him. "No." Arthur gave a small smile. "I'm learning." Maya's face softened. "You are." Allison hurried over with a clipboard, trying not to look panicked. "Mrs. Whitmore, news crews are outside. Security is keeping them away from the families, but they're asking whether you'll make a statement after the event," Maya said. "After. And Crestline released something 10 minutes ago." Arthur's eyes sharpened. "What did they say?" Allison looked at her tablet. "Crestline Airways is aware of an incident involving a passenger and crew member on Flight 482. The employee has been placed on leave pending review. We are committed to treating every customer with dignity and respect." Maya closed her eyes briefly. "A passenger," Arthur said. "A crew member." Allison looked confused. "What?" Maya opened her eyes. They erased both names, mine and Brenda's. That way nobody has to picture either one of us too clearly. Arthur took out his phone. "I'll have Caroline respond." Maya placed a hand on his wrist. "Not yet." "Maya, let them speak like that. Then I'll speak like me." From the stage, The host introduced the first scholarship recipient, a young man named Marcus Bell from Queens, whose mother worked nights at a nursing home and whose grandfather had taught him to fix engines before he learned algebra. Marcus walked up in a dark suit, too large in the shoulders. His mother stood in the front row before anyone else did, clapping with both hands pressed high, tears already on her face. Maya watched her. "That's why I came," she whispered. Arthur followed her gaze. "I know." The scholarship video played next. On the screen, students spoke about wanting to become teachers, nurses, engineers, public defenders. One girl said she wanted to study aviation because she had never seen a black woman pilot until she was 16. Another said her grandmother cleaned offices at night and still checked every homework assignment. The audience laughed softly, then cried just as softly. Maya stood very still. Allison came back. "You're next." Maya nodded. Arthur touched her hand. "I'll be right here." She looked at him. "Not too close." He stepped back a little. "Here? Perfect." The host returned to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's keynote speaker is the founder of the Maya Williams Foundation, a woman whose work has opened doors for hundreds of young people across this country. Please welcome Mrs. Maya Williams." The applause rose warm and strong. Some people stood before Maya even reached the podium. By now, many of them had seen the video. She could feel it in the room, the concern, the anger, the tenderness. But she also saw the students in the front rows, looking at her with wide, serious eyes. That steadied her more than anything. Maya placed her notes on the podium. Then she moved them aside. "I had a different speech," she began. The room quieted. It was a good speech, polished, hopeful. It had a story about my mother packing my lunch in Birmingham and telling me to walk into school like my name already belonged on every door I had not opened yet. A few people smiled. Maya continued. "I was going to talk about opportunity, about scholarships, about children, and I still am. But this morning, before I got to this room, I was reminded of something painful. Children can be told they belong. They can be educated, encouraged, dressed in their Sunday best, handed a ticket with their name on it. But if the world does not change, they will grow up and still be asked to prove they did not steal their own seat." A hush moved through the hall. Arthur stood near the curtain, his hands folded in front of him, eyes fixed on his wife. Maya said, "This morning, I boarded a flight from Atlanta to New York. I had a valid first-class ticket. My name was on it. My ID matched it. The system accepted it. But a flight attendant looked at me and decided that none of that could be true." Someone in the audience whispered, "Lord." Maya's voice remained steady. "She took the ticket from my hand. She accused me of stealing it. She told me people like me did not deserve to sit there. She grabbed my arm, and when my husband woke up, she apologized to him first for disturbing his sleep." The room shifted, not noisy, heavier. Maya looked toward the students. "I want you to hear me clearly. I was not humiliated because I lacked proof. I was humiliated because someone had already decided my proof did not matter." In the third row, the elderly woman with the cane who had spoken to Maya earlier nodded slowly. Maya went on. "My husband is Arthur Whitmore. Many of you know his name. His name changed the room, but it should not have. I was not more worthy after he stood up. I was not less worthy before he woke up. I did not become human when a billionaire held my hand." Applause broke out, sharp and emotional. Maya waited. When the room quieted, she said, "That is why tonight matters. Because every scholarship in this room is not just money. It is a declaration. It says to a young person, you belong before they recognize you. You belong before they pronounce your name correctly. You belong before they see your resume, your degree, your bank account, your spouse, or your connections." She looked down for a moment, then back up. "But belonging is not only something we give children. It is something adults must defend. In airports, in hospitals, in banks, in hotels, in classrooms, at voting booths, in boardrooms, at front desks, and yes, in first-class cabins." Arthur saw people begin to rise slowly, one by one, but Maya lifted her hand gently. "Not yet," she said, and the room settled again. "I need to say one more thing. There were people on that plane who saw what happened and said nothing. Some of them may regret it now. Some may even write statements, but regret after harm is not the same as courage before it. So I want to ask everyone here, especially those of us who believe we are good people, when you witness someone being reduced, questioned, mocked, touched, dismissed, or moved aside, what does your silence protect? No one moved. Maya's voice softened. My mother used to say, "Baby, don't let them make you loud just so they can call you angry, but don't you dare let them make you quiet either." So tonight, I am not loud, and I am not quiet. I am telling the truth. This time, the applause came like a wave. People stood, mothers cried, students clapped with their whole bodies. The elderly grandmother raised her cane slightly in the air, not as a gesture of weakness, but as a banner. Maya waited until the room calmed. Then she looked at the students again. To every young person here, do not confuse a locked door with your worth. Do not confuse someone else's suspicion with your identity. Do not confuse their discomfort with your wrongdoing. You belong in every room your purpose takes you into. And if someone asks you to prove your humanity, remember this. Respect should not come after proof. It should come first. The hall erupted. Arthur had heard Maya speak many times, but never like this. Not polished, not protected, not managed. True. The kind of true that left no place for comfortable lies to sit. Maya stepped away from the podium. Before she could leave the stage, Marcus Bell, the scholarship recipient in the oversized suit, stood from the front row. "Mrs. William?" Maya turned back. "Yes?" His voice shook, but he kept going. "My mom almost didn't come tonight because she said she didn't have the right dress. I told her nobody would care, but she cared." His mother covered her mouth. Marcus looked around the room, then back at Maya. "Thank you for saying we belong before we look like somebody thinks we should." Maya's eyes filled. "You tell your mother," Maya said, "that any room that receives you receives her too." Marcus nodded, crying now. Arthur looked down. So did half the room. Maya walked off stage to thunderous applause. Arthur met her behind the curtain but did not touch her right away. She looked at him. "You can hug me now." He did. For a moment, she let herself lean into him. Just a moment. Not because she was broken, but because even the strong need somewhere safe to set down the weight. Allison rushed over, wiping tears from her face. "Mrs. Whitmore, that was... I don't even know what to say." Maya pulled back from Arthur. "Don't say anything yet. Let the students have their night." Arthur's phone buzzed again. He checked it, and his expression changed. Maya saw it. "What?" He turned the screen toward her. Crestline stock had already started falling after hours. The video had crossed 1 million views. 3 more passengers from past flights had contacted news outlets. Arthur said, "It's spreading." Maya looked toward the stage, where the next scholarship recipient was walking up with her grandmother. "No," she said quietly. "It's surfacing." The applause inside Harlem Civic Hall continued long after Maya left the stage. But outside the building, the story was already becoming something else. Reporters had gathered behind the security ropes near the entrance. Camera lights glowed against the evening glass. Microphones rose whenever anyone stepped near the doors. Phones were everywhere. The clip from Flight 482 had spread across social media, news sites, travel forums, and group chats of people who had their own stories about being questioned, followed, moved, doubted, or told in polite language that they did not belong. Arthur stood backstage with Maya while the scholarship ceremony continued. He watched her watch the students. That was what struck him. The world outside was roaring. But Maya's eyes stayed on the young people crossing the stage, shaking hands, holding certificates, hugging mothers and grandmothers who had worked too hard for too long. Allison approached quietly. "Mrs. Whitmore, the press is asking if you'll come outside after the program." Maya said, "Not before the last student gets their moment." "Of course." Arthur's phone buzzed again. He read the message and said nothing. Maya looked at him. "Don't protect me from information." He turned the phone toward her. Crestline released an updated statement. She read it from his screen. Crestline Airways has placed the employee involved in today's incident on immediate suspension. We have launched a full internal review and are cooperating with all appropriate parties. We apologize to Mrs. Maya William for the unacceptable treatment she experienced on Flight 482. Maya stared at her own name. Arthur said, "They used it." "Yes," she said. "After being forced to. That still matters." "It does." She handed the phone back. "But an apology after exposure is not the same thing as conscience." Arthur's phone buzzed again before he could answer. This time, it was Caroline. Arthur read the message twice. Maya asked, "What?" Two more complaints. One from a retired Army nurse. One from a black minister traveling with his wife. Both mentioned Brenda. Both first class. Both closed with travel credits. Maya's face went still. Travel credits. Arthur's voice hardened. $500. And silence. From the stage, the host announced the final scholarship recipient. A girl named Nia Robinson walked up in a blue dress, her braids pinned back with silver clips. She was the girl from the photograph Maya had seen earlier, the one holding the sign that said, "I belong in the room." The audience stood for her. Nia's grandmother, the woman with the cane, lifted both hands and cried openly. Maya watched Nia receive her certificate. "Arthur, yes, when this is over, I want that complaint list. You'll have it. All of it. Names if they agree. Dates. What happened. What Crestline did. What Crestline didn't do." Arthur nodded. "I'll make sure." "No," Maya said. "We will make sure." He looked at her, then nodded again. "We will." The ceremony ended with music and applause. Families moved slowly toward the reception tables, where volunteers served roast chicken, green beans, macaroni and cheese, rolls, coffee, iced tea, and slices of sweet potato pie donated by a local bakery. The food smelled like church basements, family reunions, and Sunday afternoons. Maya walked through the hall, speaking to parents, students, and elders. People hugged her carefully, as if they could sense where the morning had bruised her. A retired school principal took her hand and said, "Baby, I've been called girl in rooms where I was the most educated person present. You keep standing." A father in a brown suit told Arthur, "You did right standing by her, but she did the teaching." Arthur shook his hand and said, "Yes, sir. She always does." Near the back of the hall, a young woman approached Maya with a phone clutched in both hands. "Mrs. William?" Maya turned. "Yes, my aunt saw the video. She flew Crestline last year. They made her change seats after a white passenger said she was in the wrong row. She had the right seat. She just didn't complain because she was scared they'd put her off the plane." Maya's eyes softened. "What's your aunt's name?" "Denise. Denise Walker. Ask Denise if she'd be willing to speak with my team. Only if she wants to." The young woman nodded quickly. "She wants to," she said. "Seeing you made her feel like she wasn't crazy." Maya swallowed. "Tell her she wasn't." Arthur heard the sentence and felt something inside him settle into a colder place. This was no longer reputation management. It was testimony gathering. It was pattern. It was exposure. Allison approached again, this time with less panic and more purpose. "The families are finishing dinner. Press is still outside. Security says we can bring you through the side exit if you don't want to face them." Maya looked toward the front doors, where camera lights flickered through the glass. "No," Arthur said. "You don't owe them tonight." "I know." "Then why?" "Because if I don't speak, Crestline's statement becomes the cleanest version of the story." Arthur studied her face. "What do you want to say?" Maya looked around the hall. At Nia. At Marcus. At the grandmother with the cane. At mothers packing leftover rolls into napkins for children who said they were full but would be hungry later. At fathers standing proudly in suits, bought for one important night. "The same thing I told them," Maya said. "But shorter. Outside, the cold hit her first. Then the lights. Mrs. Whitmore, Mrs. William. Did the airline apologize? Will you sue? Is Arthur Whitmore pulling his investment? Did the flight attendant know who you were?" Arthur walked beside Maya but slightly behind her, just as she had asked. Security held the line. Reporters shouted over one another, until Maya raised one hand. The noise lowered. Maya stood on the steps of Harlem Civic Hall, the scholarship banners behind her. She had not changed clothes. The cream sweater was still the one Brenda had looked at and judged. The brown purse still hung from her shoulder. That mattered to her. "My name is Maya William," she said. "This morning, I was accused of stealing a first-class ticket I paid for. My ID was ignored. My valid boarding pass was ignored. I was grabbed and humiliated in front of passengers who mostly chose silence." A reporter called out, "Mrs. William, was it racism?" Maya looked directly toward the voice. "Yes." The cameras clicked faster. She continued, "But I want to be clear. This is not only about one woman's words. It is about a system that received complaints before today and still allowed that woman to stand in a position of power over passengers." Another reporter shouted, "Mr. Whitmore, are you taking legal action?" Arthur looked at Maya first. She gave the smallest nod. Arthur stepped forward, still not ahead of her. "Our legal team is preserving all records and reviewing all claims. But let me be clear. This is not a private inconvenience. This was public discrimination, and it will have public accountability," Maya added. "And any past passenger who experienced something similar deserves to be heard without being bought off with miles, vouchers, or silence." A reporter asked, "What do you want from Crestline?" Maya took a breath. "The truth, then consequences. In that order." The answer moved through the crowd almost visibly. Short, plain, impossible to soften. Then an older black reporter near the front lowered his microphone slightly. His voice was gentler than the others. "Mrs. William, after what happened, why did you still speak tonight?" Maya looked back through the glass doors at the students inside. "Because those children needed to know that one ugly morning does not get to own the whole day," she said. "And because dignity is not something people hand you when they finally decide you deserve it. Dignity is what you carry before they recognize it." For a moment, even the reporters were quiet. Arthur looked at her then, not as a billionaire managing crisis, but as a husband standing beside a woman whose strength kept making the room larger. Maya gave one final statement. No one should need a rich husband, a viral video, or a lawsuit to be treated like a human being. Respect should not come after proof. It should come first. Then she turned and walked back inside. By midnight, the clip of her on the steps had passed 10 million views. By morning, the first-class incident was no longer being called a service issue anywhere except in the oldest drafts of Crestline's legal department. Former passengers began posting their stories under one phrase copied from Maya's speech, "Before proof." And somewhere in a quiet apartment outside Atlanta, Brenda Collins sat alone at her kitchen table, watching Maya's words replay on the evening news, while her employee badge lay deactivated beside a cold cup of coffee. 6 months after Crestline Airways filed for bankruptcy protection, Maya Williams stood in another airport, holding the same old brown purse against her side. This time, no one asked to see her ticket twice. This time, no one looked at her sweater, her shoes, or her skin and decided her seat was suspicious. This time, she was not boarding a flight. She was standing inside the newly renamed Terminal Training Center at JFK, facing 200 airline employees from across the country. Gate agents, flight attendants, supervisors, customer service managers, and security contractors. Some were young. Some had gray hair. Some looked eager. Some looked defensive. All of them had a folder in front of them with the same title printed across the top, "Before Proof, the Maya William Passenger Dignity Standard." Arthur stood at the back of the room, not on stage, not behind a podium, not introduced as a billionaire. He stood with his hands folded, watching his wife the way a man watches something he knows he could never own, only honor. Maya placed the creased boarding pass on the table beside the microphone. It was sealed now, in a clear, protective sleeve. People leaned forward when they saw it. Maya said, "This is not a symbol to me. It is a receipt." The room stayed quiet. "It is a receipt for a seat I paid for. A receipt for a morning I did not ask for. A receipt for the cost of being doubted before being checked." A woman in the second row lowered her eyes. A man in a supervisor badge folded his hands tighter. Maya looked across the room. I am not here to teach you how to be polite. Politeness was everywhere that morning. People said ma'am. People apologized for delays. People used professional voices. Politeness did not protect me. She let that settle. I am here to talk about respect. Respect is what happens before proof. Respect is checking the system before you accuse. Respect is looking at the document before you judge the person holding it. Respect is hearing a passenger say, "That is my seat," and not treating that sentence like a crime. Arthur watched several employees begin taking notes. Maya continued. Some of you may be thinking, I would never do what Brenda Collins did. Maybe that's true. But the bigger question is this. What would you do if someone beside you did? No one moved. That is where most injustice survives. Not in the loudest cruelty, but in the quiet permission around it. In the third row sat Evan Miller. He no longer wore a flight attendant uniform. After the investigation, he had requested a transfer to passenger advocacy training. It had cost him seniority, money, and the comfort of pretending he was only a bystander. But he had come anyway. Maya looked at him. Evan, would you stand? Evan stood. His face was pale but steady. Maya said, Tell them what you told me. Evan turned to the room. I saw her boarding pass scan green. I knew her seat was valid. I heard Brenda accuse her. I watched her refuse to check the ID, and I stayed quiet because I was afraid of my supervisor. He swallowed. I used to tell myself silence was neutral. It isn't. Silence always helps someone. That morning, mine helped the person doing harm. The room was still. Maya nodded. Thank you. Evan sat down. At the back, Arthur felt his throat tighten. He thought about the morning on Flight 482. The gray blanket. The irritation of being woken. Brenda's nervous apology to him before she had apologized to Maya. He had replayed that part more than any other, not because of what Brenda said, but because of what it revealed. The system had not failed to recognize dignity. It had recognized power instead. That afternoon, Arthur would speak at a national business forum. His prepared remarks had been rewritten 6 times. Maya had read the final draft once, crossed out an entire page, and written in the margin, "Don't make yourself the hero." He had listened. After the training ended, employees lined up to speak with Maya. Some apologized for things they had never done. Some asked honest questions. Some told stories about moments when they had seen coworkers mistreat passengers and had looked away. Maya listened, but she did not comfort everyone. Comfort was not her job. Change was. An older gate agent named Patricia waited until the line thinned. She had silver hair, soft hands, and a small gold cross around her neck. "Mrs. William," Patricia said, "I've worked gates for 29 years. I thought I was fair. But when you talked about deciding who looks like they belong, I remembered things." Maya waited. Patricia's eyes filled. "I remembered asking certain passengers for extra ID and not others. I told myself I was being careful." Maya's voice was gentle but firm. "Careful. With whom?" Patricia closed her eyes. "Not with them. With myself." Maya nodded. "That's where the work starts." Patricia wiped her face. "I'm ashamed." "Good," Maya said. "Shame can be useful if you don't build a house in it." Later that evening, Arthur stood on a stage in Washington, D.C., before CEOs, investors, board members, and reporters. The event had been planned months earlier as a discussion about corporate responsibility. Now there was no way to discuss anything else. Arthur walked to the podium alone. Maya sat in the front row, wearing a navy dress and the same simple necklace her mother had given her when she turned 21. Arthur looked at her first, then he faced the room. "6 months ago," he began, "my wife was accused of stealing a ticket she had paid for. When I woke up and the flight attendant recognized me, everything changed. That is the part that should shame every powerful person in this room." The room quieted. "Not because I intervened. Any husband should stand beside his wife. The shame is that my presence made people willing to see what they should have seen before I opened my eyes." He paused. "My wife was not worthy of respect because she married me. She was worthy before I knew her name. She was worthy when she walked onto that plane. She was worthy when she handed over her ID. She was worthy when no one spoke for her. And she would still be worthy if no billionaire had been sitting beside her. Maya looked down, but Arthur saw the faint movement of her hand over her heart. He continued, "For years, men like me have called injustice unfortunate while profiting from systems that made it predictable. We have funded scholarships and ignored hiring practices. We have praised diversity and tolerated complaint departments that turned discrimination into travel credits. We have said the right things when cameras were on and asked for quiet settlements when they were not." Several people shifted in their seats. Arthur did not soften. "I withdrew my investment from Crestline because the company did not collapse from one viral video. It collapsed from every ignored complaint before it. A business is not destroyed by accountability. It is destroyed by the habits that make accountability necessary." The applause began slowly, then grew. Arthur did not smile. This was not a victory lap. It was a confession with witnesses. After the event, a reporter asked Maya, "Do you feel justice has been served?" Maya thought before answering. She had learned that people liked justice to sound final, like a door closing. "No," she said. "Justice is not one payment, one firing, one bankruptcy, or one speech. Justice is what keeps happening after the headlines move on." The reporter asked, "Then what would you call what happened?" Maya looked at Arthur, then back at the reporter. "A beginning." 1 year after Flight 482, the Maya William Dignity Fund opened its first permanent office in Atlanta, not far from the neighborhood where Maya's father had once driven a school bus route every morning before sunrise. The office was modest. Brick walls, bright windows, donated furniture, a coffee station in the corner, and a front desk staffed by 2 former scholarship recipients who greeted every visitor by name. On the wall near the entrance hung a framed copy of the boarding pass. Beneath it were the words, "Respect should not come after proof. It should come first." Tasha Reed joined the fund as a legal fellow. Renee Watkins chaired the advisory board. Evan Miller helped train airline staff on intervention and witness responsibility. Margaret Ellis volunteered twice a month, helping older passengers write complaints they had once been too embarrassed to file. Leonard's wife, Clara, led a support circle for travelers with disabilities and mobility challenges. Brenda Collins did not attend the opening, but 3 weeks later, a letter arrived. It was handwritten, 3 pages long. Maya read it alone at her kitchen table. Brenda wrote that she had told herself she was protecting standards. She wrote that she had mistaken suspicion for professionalism. She wrote that growing up, she had absorbed ideas about who belonged in certain spaces and had never questioned them because those ideas had served her. She did not ask for forgiveness. She wrote 1 sentence. Maya read twice. "I thought I could recognize the wrong passenger, but I had become the wrong person." Arthur found Maya still sitting with the letter when he came home. "What are you going to do?" he asked. Maya folded the pages carefully. "Nothing today." "Do you believe her?" "I believe she's starting to see herself. That's not the same as repair." "No." Maya placed the letter back in its envelope. "But it's something." That evening, Maya and Arthur walked through their neighborhood in Atlanta. It was warm, the kind of southern evening that smelled like cut grass, charcoal smoke, and someone's peach cobbler cooling near an open window. Children rode bikes in the street. An older man waved from his porch. A church bell rang in the distance. Arthur took Maya's hand. She looked at him. "You know people still call you the man who saved me." Arthur winced. "I hate that." "I know. You saved yourself." Maya shook her head. "That's not quite right either." Arthur waited. She looked down the street, where a little girl was helping her grandmother carry groceries up the steps. "None of us saves ourselves alone. But there's a difference between standing beside someone and standing over them." Arthur squeezed her hand. "I hope I stood beside you." Maya smiled. "Most of the time." He laughed softly. "I'll take that." She leaned into him as they walked, not because she needed support, but because love, at its best, was a place where strength did not have to perform. Months passed. Then, years. Crestline's name disappeared from airport monitors, replaced by a restructured carrier under federal oversight. The before-proof standard spread across airlines, hotels, hospitals, banks, and public agencies. Not everywhere. Not perfectly. But enough that people began using the phrase when they trained new employees. Before proof. Respect. And every year, at the Maya William Dignity Fund Gala, Maya told the same story, not to relive the pain, but to keep its lesson alive. She always ended the same way. A stolen ticket was never the story, she would say. The story was a stolen assumption, the assumption that some people belong at the front, and others should be grateful for the back. Then she would look out over the room, at students, parents, elders, workers, donors, and those who had come carrying stories no one had believed before. No one should need a rich husband, a viral video, or a lawsuit to be treated like a human being. Respect should not come after proof. It should come first. And somewhere in the room, Arthur would stand quietly, clapping with everyone else. Proud not because the world knew his wife's name, but because long before the world learned it, Maya William had known exactly who she was. The lesson of this story is simple but powerful. No one should have to prove their worth before being treated with dignity. Maya's experience reminds us that discrimination often begins with an assumption, and silence from bystanders can make that injustice even stronger. True respect means seeing a person's humanity before judging their clothes, skin color, accent, money, or status. And real courage is not just standing up when someone powerful is involved, but speaking out when someone vulnerable is being treated unfairly. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it touched your heart, I would truly love to hear your thoughts on the storytelling, the emotional pacing, or whatever stayed with you after listening. Every comment you share helps make the next stories more honest, moving, and meaningful. And if you have a powerful or meaningful story of your own, please do not hesitate to send it to the channel. It may become the next story to touch and inspire thousands of others. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.